Hi, and welcome back to the channel. If this is your first time here, my name is Jonathan Martin, and I've been teaching academic English at Helsinki University for more than 15 years now. And today, I'm going to help you improve your academic style. So writing formally means following some conventions that have grown up around academic English. Remember that English is not a normative language. There is not a set of rules. We derive the rules from the way the language is used. And in academic writing, it's been used in certain ways for a variety of reasons for a long time. And if you follow these conventions, your writing will not only be more academic, but will also be clearer and easier to understand. And as we go through the examples, I'll explain why. Now, this is not always the case. There are some conventions or rules where it's not clear what the purpose is. For example, the convention that in academic writing we don't use contractions, we don't shorten words. But for the most part, they will help you to write more clearly and more concisely. I'm going to focus on the most common conventions from having analysed hundreds of essays that students have written for me. So to make this more enjoyable, what I'm going to do is I'm going to present a sentence and I want you to work out what is informal. And in this way, when I give you the answer, hopefully you'll remember the rule and we'll go through some more examples. So our first example, exposing the machine to large volumes of data gets more accurate results. Now with all of these, I want you to try to work out what is informal before I tell you, but I won't pause, so you'll need to pause yourself after I read the sentence. So in this case, the issue is the use of the verb gets. It's what I would call a generic verb. It's a verb that gets used all the time because it has so many meanings, but none of those meanings are very precise, and so we like to avoid using it in academic writing. What we want when we write academically is to be as precise as possible. So what could we use instead? Well, how about exposing the machine to large volumes of data achieves more accurate results? That automatically sounds more formal. Let's take a look at another one. Reducing these biases can also be done by unweighting the sensitive variables. Now the issue here is the use of the verb to do, so done. Can we replace it or can we just get rid of it? Well, how about these biases can also be reduced by unweighting the sensitive variables? Typically, if you found that you've used the verb to do, it may well be possible to just eliminate it and create a verb from a noun. Okay, we'll look at one more on this topic. The company got information from an app that built psychological profiles of its users. Okay, here we have the verb to get again, another generic verb. What could be more precise than got information? Well, maybe the company received information, acquired information. Maybe it harvested information from the app. We don't know, but each of those verbs gives more information, is more precise. So as a general principle, what you want to be doing is checking yourself every time you find yourself using one of these very common verbs and thinking, hang on, can I be more precise with this? And your writing will automatically be more formal. So, our top convention is avoid generic verbs like do and have and be. Use precise verbs if you can. Okay, on to our second convention. Okay, let's move on to another example from a different convention, and again we'll see if you can work out what the informality is. There is not enough habitable space. Okay, this one's less obvious, but it's an issue of using negatives when a positive would be clearer, and usually using positive language uses fewer words, and of course it makes more sense to say what something is than what it isn't. So here, instead of there is not enough, we might say there is too little habitable space. Okay, let's look at another example. The authorities were not aware of the level of discontent. So if you're not aware of something, what might you be? You might be unaware of it. So they were unaware of the level of discontent. It's a small change, but it adds a level of crispness and conciseness that makes it more academic, more formal, and nicer to listen to. The economic divide is described as people not having sufficient funds to acquire a computer. So we've got another negative here, not having sufficient funds. If you don't have sufficient funds, you have insufficient funds. So that's how we could fix that. Quite often there's a negative version of the word that you're saying it's not. You can just flip it and use the negative version of that word. We'll look at one more example here. Handling big data does not come without problems. So now there's two negatives. You've got handling the data does not come and without problems. So we could just simplify this by getting rid of all the negatives. Handling big data is problematic. So our number 2 is avoid needless negatives. Now in practice, it doesn't matter in many cases if you're using a negative, but if you can avoid it, it will make your writing shorter, it will make it clearer. So you should if you can, but don't worry if it's not easy for you to remove those. They're also easy to find. Just use Command F on a Mac or Control F on a PC and type in negative words. Not, no, do not. And that way you'll be able to find them and see if you can remove them. Right, on to number 3. A third convention now, so see if you can identify the convention. There's been rapid progress towards this goal. Okay, I mentioned this in the introduction. There's a contraction here. So a word has been shortened. Instead of there has, we had there's. And this is just something we don't do in formal academic writing. We don't use contractions. So we need to get rid of it. There has been rapid progress towards this goal. Another quick example, since this is so easy. A quarter of the population can't use a computer at all. So that would be a quarter of the population cannot use a computer at all. Number 3 then, avoid contractions. Like the negative words, these are incredibly easy to find. Command F on the Mac, Control F on the PC, and write in the apostrophe. And you can check your possessives or your genitives at the same time. Okay, on to number 4. It will be hard to predict the future of human development if we do not have a schedule to follow. So there's actually a couple of informalities here. There's a negative, but we're moving on to a different topic now, which is the use of the word we. We don't use we in formal writing unless we're saying what we, the authors, did, and that's usually in the methods section of some kind of research paper. But in this context, where we refers to humanity, we don't use it, so this is informal. But we can get rid of it quite easily. Let's say, it will be hard to predict the future of human development without a schedule. So it's also shorter and cleaner. Okay, one more. In this essay, I will discuss the history and promise of the James Webb Space Telescope, the JWST. Here the issue again is this personal pronoun. It's using I. And again, we don't use I unless we're saying what I have done in some research methods. We talk about what the essay is going to talk about. So a more formal example here would be, this essay will discuss the history and promise of the JWST. Shorter again and cleaner. One more then. Information technologies give us opportunities we haven't had before. Again, another informality has snuck in there with the haven't, but we're looking at the we again. How might we avoid using we? Information technologies provide new opportunities. Says exactly the same thing. And we also eliminate the other informalities there with the negative and with the use of haven't had, these generic verbs. So avoid using I and we unless you're explaining what you, the authors or author, did as part of the research methods of the paper. So don't use I to express an opinion, and don't use we as the kind of global we to talk about we, the people, humanity. Find another way to express that. Okay, the last one. I'm going to read the sentence again. Tell me what the informality is. With AI increasingly common and improving in quality, new ethical challenges come up. So the issue here is the phrasal verb come up, a phrasal verb being a verb with a preposition after it. That has a different meaning. For some reason, we don't favour these phrasal verbs, and if we can find a verb that does not have the preposition after it, we tend to use those in formal writing. So here we might say, with AI increasingly common and improving in quality, new ethical challenges arise, or appear, perhaps. Let's look at another one. When artificial intelligence is talked about today, what is usually being referred to are newer innovations such as machine learning algorithms. So the phrasal verb here is talked about. We might fix this by writing when artificial intelligence is discussed today. So a single verb, no prepositions necessary, and then it's a little bit cleaner, a little bit more formal. These can be quite difficult to master. Sometimes it's hard to think of a synonym, but Google is your friend there. You can just type in the phrasal verb and synonyms and Google will help you. One more. This project would end up failing in 2013 as it would miss the flu season because of the algorithm's weaknesses. So we've got end up here. This project would fail. So instead of end up failing, just this project would fail in 2013. It means the same thing. There's no less information conveyed there. One more, just for fun. In some scenarios, programming a machine could take up considerable time. So take up there is the phrasal verb, and we want to replace that with a single verb. So how about, in some scenarios, programming a machine could consume or could fill considerable time. So, rounding out the top 5 is avoid using phrasal verbs, the verb and the preposition. Just use a single verb, try to make it as precise as possible, and use that instead if you can. So that's it for the top 5. If you master these or even get these to 80% correctness, you will already be writing much more academically, much more clearly, and that will be a great benefit to your readers. So there are at least 5 more conventions, and I will create another video which covers those next week. And I also have many other videos on other topics related to academic writing, so please take a look, like and subscribe, and hopefully this was useful.